Before we dive into today's episode, I invite you to take this moment to ground yourself. Wherever you are, whether you're walking, lying down, driving, or just sitting, see if you can bring some awareness to your breath. No need to change it, just notice it. Inhale through your nose. And exhale gently through your mouth. Let your shoulders soften. Unclench your jaw. Loosen the space between your brows. Drop your shoulders from your ears. Feel the weight of your body being supported. Whether it's the ground, a chair, or your bed, just notice it. You're allowed to let go. You're allowed to feel safe. If your nervous system is holding on to tension today, that's okay. You are not doing anything wrong. This is a space where all parts of you are welcome. Take one more deep breath in through your nose. And a full breath out with a sigh. When you're ready, let's begin the episode. Welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. In this show, we're getting real about navigating the ups and downs of life together. I'm your host, Erin, and we're ditching the pressure to have it all figured out along the way, because honestly, nobody does. We'll explore all things healing, growing, creating, and connecting. And if you deal with anxiety, depression, being a highly sensitive person, or just feeling overwhelmed by life sometimes, I see you, and this show is for you. My intention with these conversations is simple: to leave you feeling empowered, validated, and most importantly, reminded that you are never alone, no matter where you're at on your own journey. Learning that we all have the power to heal genuinely changed my life. And the best part, healing does not have to be complicated. The smallest changes really can make the biggest impact, and it can be joyful, fulfilling, and something that we do together. So join me in getting real about what it means to heal. Thank you for being here, and now let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin, or welcome back to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. I'm your host, Erin, and whether you are listening or watching over on YouTube today, I am, as always, grateful to have you. I hope you enjoyed our little grounding exercise to open this episode up. I have not done that before, but I wanted to give it a try, and especially with an episode like this talking about anxiety. I know it can bring up a lot of different feelings or emotions, and I want you to know that you are safe to feel however you're feeling here, and no matter what you're feeling, it will pass and you will feel at ease once again. So today's episode is 1 year since I have been Effexor free off of my SNRI antidepressant medication that I was on for 6.5 years. And I'm going to share, more importantly, my go-to tips and tools for anxiety. So today's episode is really close to my heart because I am 1 year Effexor free, because there was a time when that felt like it was never going to be possible. And if you're on this path or even thinking about it, I see you. I know how intense and lonely and confusing it can feel to be navigating anxiety in general, or to be on an antidepressant medication that you did not know the side effects or the withdrawals you might experience before going on it, and now you're dealing with them, or you're on a tapering journey experiencing the withdrawals. I see you, and this isn't about saying that everyone needs to get off of medication at all, but I want to speak with those of you and share my story with those of you who are dealing with anxiety, withdrawal, or just wondering if healing is possible. I am here to keep it real about the highs and the lows and everything in between, and most importantly, let you know that it is absolutely possible to live off of medication and live a life where anxiety does not rule over you and does not take over your life. And there are so many ways that we are able to regulate ourselves. And I will share a brief disclaimer that none of this is medical advice. I am not a medical professional. This is all just my own experience in what has worked for me and the things that I have learned and implemented that have brought me healing from my anxiety disorder. So if you aren't familiar, I did start this entire podcast off with a 3-part Effexor series where I go more in depth about my experience being prescribed and put onto Effexor and diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression probably about 8 years ago now. And then part 2 of the series was my experience and the pros and cons of being on Effexor, and part 3 was all about tapering off of Effexor and the withdrawals. So if you'd like to hear more in depth about my Effexor journey, you can listen to that. It's episodes 1 to 3 of this podcast. I felt extremely called to start this podcast off with that series because it's something that was such a huge part of my life and my healing that I found out so many others struggled with and wanted to have more awareness, more conversation, and information around the topic of Effexor and antidepressants in general. When I started sharing a bit about my experience online over the last year and a half almost, I still am met with comments and messages, conversations with others struggling with Effexor or antidepressant medication. So I know that it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's something that can feel really lonely and scary, but you are never alone in what you're feeling or thinking or experiencing. And it is thanks to others sharing their experience with me that I felt empowered enough to continue trying to taper off of Effexor entirely once I felt grounded enough and strong enough in a place mentally, overall, in a place with my health and wellness where I knew that I had the tools to actually manage my anxiety outside of medication. Because as I also shared in the series, I actually experienced the most and worst anxiety and depression while on the medication that was prescribed to me to help with anxiety and depression. So I hit a certain point, which I also shared in a previous episode about my breakdown, my full physiological breakdown that led to my breakthrough, because it was about 3, maybe 4 years into being on Effexor that I had a complete physiological breakdown, and I decided that I had no other option but to explore holistic health and wellness, alternative methods or ways of bettering my overall health and wellness, because I had been going down the Western medicine route, searching for answers and solutions and help with my struggles, and yeah, it wasn't working out, and I came to a full breakdown. And so that's when my deep healing, holistic healing journey began. And a year and a half after that began, I went to my doctor telling her that I felt that I was in an entirely different place than I was when I was prescribed this medication, and I felt that I was able to begin tapering off. And that tapering journey ended up being 8 months long. Again, if you're interested in that, it's in episode 3, part 3 of the series. But now, this month, April, it has been 1 year since I have been free from taking Effexor. So I wanted to reflect and share the tips and tools that have allowed me to manage anxiety holistically and without medication, because I've been there. It can feel incredibly lonely going through this journey with anxiety and being on medication and maybe wanting to come off of it. It can feel like no one gets it. It can feel like you're never going to get out of this dark place or this loop that you're in, especially when you're told by professionals to just try a different medication, or that everything looks fine when you take blood work or tests or whatever it is, but you know that everything is not fine. It can feel incredibly frustrating and lonely and defeating. And I totally get that. I was there for so long, and so I want to continue to share the things that have helped me to better my overall health and wellness, in hopes that it can be valuable to someone else who might be in the spot that I was once in, and know that what you're feeling is entirely valid and that your body is working hard to find balance again. And your anxiety symptoms, this one quote has really helped me, that feeling uncomfortable does not mean that you are unsafe. So while anxiety symptoms can feel incredibly uncomfortable, and your brain is telling you that you're unsafe when you feel them, you're not. Think about every time you've experienced this feeling and you've always made it through and you've always felt better again. And here's the thing, just because I'm off of medication doesn't mean that anxiety does not come up for me. Doesn't mean that I never feel anxious. I do. Anxiety is an emotion that we are meant to feel on the spectrum of emotions as human beings. But now I don't spiral in it. I don't let it take over my life. And that is a huge shift. Because when I was struggling with my generalized anxiety disorder, it would take over my life and I would be stuck in that spiral. And finding tools to not allow that to happen has been the biggest life changer, which we're going to get into in a little bit here. But I think that's important to note because I've realized that healing from anxiety doesn't mean that anxiety never shows up. It means that you build a toolkit that helps you stay grounded when it does. And especially after coming fully off of Effexor, for a few months afterwards, my brain would feed me thoughts like, am I actually okay off of medication? What if I actually am someone who just needs to be on medication? What if it actually was doing more for me than I thought that it was? Because I often mention how, again, I experienced the most anxiety and depression while on the medication. So even though I consciously knew it was a part of my life for 6.5 years, I took it every day. So in moments of an anxiety symptom coming on after coming off of the medication, or I'd be in an environment or in a situation that typically before in the past brought on anxiety, sometimes my brain would send me those negative thoughts of what if I'm not okay off this medication. And I talked to my therapist about it and she said, that's pretty normal. And again, your thoughts are not facts and you don't have to believe them or listen to them. And it's normal for your brain to feed you those thoughts after taking something every day for 6.5 years. So if you're someone who's still dealing with symptoms, even after all of the work you've done to better your mental health, I just want to say this loud and clear. You are not going backwards. That is what I've learned. You are not broken. You are human. And you are inevitably meant to experience all of the emotions on the spectrum of emotion. Healing from an anxiety disorder does not mean that you're never going to feel anxiety ever again, but it's really helpful to actively challenge your thoughts and look at how much growth you've actually had. So I want to share some tools and tips that have helped me to manage my anxiety in a more empowered, holistic way. Now, these aren't magic fixes, but they're what I always come back to whenever I feel myself slipping into old patterns or when my nervous system is overwhelmed. Some of these are things that I do daily to manage anxiety long term, and others are things that I reach for in the moments of heightened anxiety. It's about knowing what you need in different moments and listening to your body. What this past year has taught me is that I still sometimes get some of the physiological symptoms of anxiety that would traditionally send me into a thought spiral that would send me into a full-blown anxiety attack or a long-term episode of anxiety. So things like muscle tightness, muscle shakiness, heart palpitations, anxiety, nausea, dizziness, intrusive thoughts, difficulty falling asleep. But I now know how to respond. Instead of making these symptoms mean something scary about me, that something bad is happening and that I'm in trouble, I try my best to use them as cues, signals from my body that something needs attention or care. So I'm going to share my tips and tools in kind of two categories. One, things that I do daily or for long-term management of anxiety, and then things that I do in moments of heightened anxiety. I want to emphasize that these are tools, not cures, and it's about creating safety in your system consistently, because your nervous system needs to feel safe in order to feel at ease and be able to shift into and live in rest and digest mode instead of fight or flight, which is what we are living in when we are in anxiety. So I'm going to start with my tips and tools for long-term management. And a lot of these I've either talked about in previous episodes before and have went more in depth on. And I'm going to have a nervous system regulation series coming up in the podcast over a series of several episodes where I break down the tools and go more in depth in them. In each episode, I had a nervous system regulation episode. I think it was episode 4 of this podcast. And it is one of my best performing episodes. So I see that it's something people are searching for. So I would like to break it down and go more in depth with each of those tools. And I say that because my number one tool for the long-term management of anxiety is daily nervous system regulation. And that can mean many things. There are many ways to regulate your nervous system. Like I just said, I've shared a whole nervous system regulation tools to reduce stress and anxiety episode, and I'm going to be going more in depth on each of these tools pretty soon here on the podcast over a series. But essentially, nervous system regulation is sending signals to your body that it is safe. And over time, this allows your body to shift into the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system state that it needs to be in order to relax, rest, heal, grow, make any sort of change. Whereas most of the time in this world, we are stuck in fight or flight or freeze state, which is our sympathetic nervous system. And the way that our environment, our society is structured, we are inevitably sent into fight or flight, and we are inevitably dysregulated most of the time if we aren't paying attention to caring for our nervous system. So I start off with that because every other tool I'm about to talk about falls under the category of nervous system regulation, because it's about allowing your body and mind to feel safe, to live in a balanced state. And I do want to say, before we move ahead with all the other tools, which all fall under nervous system regulation, it's not about feeling calm all the time, because that's not healthy either. We are meant to feel the spectrum of different emotions throughout our days. It's about being flexible. So being able to experience the ups and downs of life and be able to come in and out of rest and digest, freeze, fight or flight more easily, more naturally. Whereas when we're dysregulated in our nervous system, we are stuck in fight or flight or freeze. So nervous system regulation is about making our nervous system more flexible to handle what life has coming at us. And when we are specifically talking about anxiety, we are stuck in fight or flight. Our body, our nervous system, our subconscious sends the signal that we are in danger, and our cortisol spikes, our stress receptors spike, and our body prepares for battle, pretty much, as if we need to fight off a bear that is attacking us or something. I see videos, you've probably seen videos online where it's like, my nervous system unfortunately doesn't know the difference between being chased by a bear and answering an email at work. And it's funny, but it's true. Like I said, in today's day, our nervous system can be shot and dysregulated and in fight or flight by the most seemingly simple, unscary things, but our nervous system feels that fear, and that's all that matters. And a lot of that stems from our subconscious conditioning, which stems from our childhood, primarily the ages of 0 to 7. Everything we experience in that time in our environment. So again, stay tuned for my nervous system regulation series, where I'm going to go more in depth, more specific about each of the tools shared in that previous episode, because addressing my nervous system was the number one thing that changed my life and gave me the ability, the capacity to even be able to come to the point where I felt that I was able to even try and taper off of Effexor. So continuing on with the tips that all fall under regulating your nervous system and allowing you to experience less anxiety long term. Daily movement, especially stretching, because when you're someone with anxiety, you carry so much tension in your muscles and your fascia. So daily stretching is something that is going to be very helpful for you. When I started stretching, and I was someone who grew up playing sports, and then once I became an adult, I stopped playing sports, and I'd work out, but I wouldn't prioritize stretching anymore. And I had so many aches and pains, and at the same time of having so much anxiety. And when I began learning about the holistic ways to heal, I began to create the habit of stretching daily, and I will never give it up. It will change your life as someone with anxiety, because we carry so much in our body. As we've heard many times, the body keeps the score. Stress and unprocessed emotions are held in our muscles and our fascia, so stretching is going to be huge. It can be 5 minutes in the morning and at night, 10 minutes, however long you can make work consistently. It's not about how hard you go when you do it, but doing it consistently will make a huge difference for you. On top of that, doing things like getting massages or fire cupping therapy. I love fire cupping with my massage. I recently shared it on my Instagram. I love how that goes the extra mile with relieving toxins and tension from your body. So moving your body, especially stretching, and of course going for walks outside, anytime outside in nature, any sort of mindful movement, so yoga, Pilates, whatever sort of workout works for you, and knowing it doesn't have to be a strenuous workout for it to count, especially with anxiety. Next is breath work, and it does not have to be complicated. Simply taking a few minutes throughout your day to pay attention to your breath, do a couple deep breaths. My favorite that I've shared before and the best to manage stress and anxiety is the physiological sigh, where you take a deep breath in through your nose, followed by another sharp inhale in through your nose, and then you exhale through thinly pursed lips. That is scientifically shown to release anxiety and stress in the moment, but it doesn't have to be an hour-long breathwork class or anything. Just paying attention to your body. Again, when I was first on this journey of healing from my anxiety disorder holistically, I would catch myself not breathing. Like, I literally would have to remind myself to breathe throughout the day, and I would stop while I was working and do like 5 intentional breaths and immediately feel better. I remember being so shocked at how much your breath actually does matter, and it can be so frustrating to hear as someone with anxiety being told you just need to connect to your breath, and you're like, well, I would do that if I could, but my breath is so shallow in my chest, I can't even take a deep breath. And I promise you, the more that you try to pay attention to your breath and breathe intentionally, you will build the capacity to be able to breathe those deeper stomach breaths that help you to actually relieve tension. Next is meditation. Daily meditation, or however often works for you. Whatever habit you can create that is going to be sustainable for you. So if it's not every day, maybe it's twice a week, 3 times a week, however often you are able to consistently meditate. And again, this doesn't have to be extremely complicated. You can start with 5 minutes a day, then work your way up as you build the tolerance. Any time that you can take to be still, observe your thoughts instead of letting them control you is a win. I am a meditation teacher, and I have been putting out full moon and new moon energy cleansing Reiki infused meditations on podcast platforms and YouTube, and I hope you guys are enjoying them. And they are specifically structured to cleanse and balance your energy, which helps to regulate your nervous system, because your energy needs to be balanced for your nervous system to be regulated. So that is specifically what I craft the meditations to do. And I like to follow the moon cycle because it's realistic. You can do it twice a month, and it's an energetically powerful time to look inward, become still, and regulate your nervous system and show yourself some love by doing a meditation. So if you're interested in that, you can look out for those that come bi-weekly. And there's research that shows that meditation literally rewires our brain. So if you're someone who deals with anxiety, specifically intrusive negative thought loops, anxiety helps you to slow down your mind and over time become an observer of your thoughts rather than being controlled by your thoughts, which I know sounds way easier said than done as someone with anxiety. I used to be so frustrated trying to meditate, saying I couldn't meditate. But I promise you, the more and more you practice it, it will become easier. And even the most experienced meditation teachers or people who meditate still can struggle with quieting their mind. But it's about the intention of setting the time to do it that really matters. Okay, next, which arguably is actually like the number one thing that helps you to manage anxiety over time and regulate your nervous system, is focusing on your joy. Doing more of what brings you joy and lights you up and feels fun to you. We have, again, a past episode about the science of fun and why having fun is healing and why you need to prioritize your joy literally for your health and wellness. And especially with anxiety, everything can feel so heavy and so serious and at times so scary, and truly the realization of that it does not always have to be that serious, and taking the pressure off of so much of life and the things that we feel are the biggest deal that are creating all of this anxiety within us, and just deciding it's not that serious, taking the pressure off of ourselves, creating more space for ourselves to feel joy and do the things that bring us joy is honestly probably the number one thing I would actually suggest you to do. Just take some inventory of how often you're actually allowing yourself to do the things that bring you joy, small or big, and then seeing how you can incorporate more of that into your life. When it comes to healing and your healing journey with anxiety, there was a point I came to in my healing where I realized sometimes the most healing thing you can do is just not take your healing so seriously. And not every day has to be a project. Sometimes you need to just let go of the tools and the lessons and the practices and just allow yourself to live and feel joy and just be. Because you can quickly on a healing journey start to feel like you are a project for self-growth and you're a project that you need to be changing and constantly working on. And it's a fine line where it can become more stressful than anything, and then you're burning out from healing, which is the exact opposite of what you set out on this journey to do, which was to better your mental health, your overall health and wellness. So not taking things so seriously and creating space for yourself to feel more joy and just be and enjoy life is the number one thing I would suggest to start with as someone with anxiety. Okay, next is having social media free days. And this is going to be huge for you as someone with anxiety because you might not exactly think so, but even just being on an app and scrolling, you're seeing so much, you're taking in so much stimulus, so much information that we are not meant to take in. We are not meant to know the amount or have access to the amount of information that we have access to now. And if you're prone to anxiety, it is inevitably going to build up as stress and anxiety inside of you. So taking a day or two a week to not be on the apps can help your system to decompress, and also it can allow you on those days that you are on the apps, on social media, you're not reaching for them quite as much as you once were when you didn't create any space to have a break from them, because in the days that you're not on it, over time, you will notice that you're not thinking about it, you're not reaching for it as much anymore, and inevitably it becomes less of a part of your life. I also have a social media, how to have a healthy relationship with it episode in the past as well. I'll try to remember each of these episodes I'm mentioning in this episode and link them in the show description below. So if you're interested in listening to any of them, they will be there for you. But social media breaks and media breaks in general, or at least auditing what kind of media you're taking in. Like if you're someone who watches or reads the news every day, or if you're someone who has anxiety but you're binge watching or listening to true crime. I know it's so tempting, but limiting the time that you're taking in that sort of media, at least in my experience, can be very helpful. Because there's a lot going on in this world, and there's already so much that we're taking in, more than we were ever meant to take in or be aware of before. Next is taking care of your gut health. So eating fermented food, eating enough food. I've shared before, but when I had my full physiological breakdown, it largely was due to my extremely poor gut health at the time. And the first thing I did was address my gut health and start to eat food that was healthy for my gut. Eating fermented food like sauerkraut, having sauerkraut every day, kimchi, you can have kombucha, getting in your probiotics and your prebiotics, and eating more nutritious food. At first, I started with an elimination diet, and I completely cut caffeine. That's another tip, is to limit your caffeine and alcohol consumption. And those are two things I completely cut at the beginning for several months, and I did an elimination diet, and I only ate certain things that were healthy for my gut for a few months, or actually it was close to a year. And the good news is that after a while, you do have more flexibility. Once you've addressed and healed your gut, you have more flexibility to eat or drink the things that aren't necessarily great for it. But when you have the habit of at least the majority of your diet being supportive of your gut health, you have the room to have some cocktails, or to have your coffee again, or to eat some junk food. But at least for me, I had to take a large chunk of time off of that to get myself set up right. The mind-gut axis is so real. And if your gut is unwell, your mind is going to be unwell. And if your mind is unwell, you might want to look at how your gut is doing, because they are directly linked. And I learned that the very hard way. Something I do is eat sauerkraut every day. I just take the giant jar I have in my fridge out and I eat forkfuls of that every single day. Also, something I know looking back really made my gut health suffer was that I wouldn't eat enough in a day. And as women, or just humans in general, food can be hard. It can be a very tough area for a lot of people. Getting enough food or not overeating, but undereating also can be an issue. And if you have anxiety, the symptoms of anxiety can make you feel like you aren't able to eat. And it's a vicious cycle because then you're even more nauseous because you haven't eaten enough, but you're nauseous from anxiety, so you feel like you can't eat. And that is the worst vicious cycle to be in. And I was in that, and then my gut health completely crashed and I had a full physiological breakdown. So I encourage you, even if it's just you make a protein smoothie and you sip on that when you're having anxiety symptoms because you don't feel like you can get anything else down, really try to get your nutrients in somehow. Because every time I have, since being Effexor free, had heightened anxiety come up, I've been able to pinpoint the fact that I wasn't necessarily eating properly leading up to that time. A large part of it is based in your gut. You can be doing everything else to be healing and regulating your nervous system, but if you're not taking care of your gut health, or you're at least not eating enough, it is going to impact your mind as well. Okay, we're almost done this section, then we'll get on to tools to use in the moment of heightened anxiety. But next is slowing down and resting. With anxiety can commonly come perfectionism, and that can come with feeling like you always have to be doing, or being productive, but then you're also procrastinating things that you want to do because you have perfectionism and anxiety. And this can get really exhausting and it feels like you're always on, but at the same time, sometimes it feels like you're not getting done the things that you want to be getting done. And I encourage you to allow yourself to slow down and take time to actually rest. A lot of the time, some of the most productive ideas come from the time that you are slowing down and resting. Your nervous system needs you to slow down to be able to regulate. So even small things like when you're brushing your teeth, slow down. Or when you're heading out the door to go to work, try to slow down. When you're washing your hair in the shower, slow down. These little micro habits of slowing down all add up, and it sends a signal to your nervous system that you are safe, and that is how you regulate. But also just allowing yourself to not always have to be doing something productive. I talk a lot about being a recovering perfectionist. We have our perfectionism episode where we talk all about that and the root of perfectionism being shame, and people with anxiety often struggle with perfectionism, and that is just a vicious loop that keeps you stuck in anxiety. And it can feel hard to rest or to allow yourself to slow down, but it is very important. And finally, connecting with spirit. Connecting with something and having a belief in something that is bigger than yourself will help you with anxiety, which helps me transition into the tools that help in the moment of heightened anxiety, because one of those tools is also leaning into the belief of something bigger than yourself, being a little bit delulu, and choosing to lean into gratitude and choosing to believe that things are always happening in your favor, because our anxious thoughts tell us the opposite, tell us that everything is wrong, everything is bad, and that you're in danger. So challenging those thoughts in the moment of heightened anxiety and leaning into everything's working out for me, spirit is on my side, and I have got this, and I am okay. Because now we'll go into more tools for in the moment of heightened anxiety. Because when a physiological symptom comes up, like your beating heart, you're starting to sweat, you have muscle tension, you feel tingles in your arms, your hands, you're feeling that anxiety, nausea, dizziness, your mind can quickly latch onto fear-based thoughts, thinking something's wrong, I'm in danger, what if I pass out, what if this happens, something bad is happening, I've done something wrong. And that's typically what would send me into a full-blown anxiety attack when a physical symptom comes, and then the negative thought loop, the spiraling thoughts come with it. This is where challenging your thoughts is number one. Stopping your mind, or not even stopping it, but just choosing to challenge your thoughts instead and tell yourself in your mind, that's not true. I am safe. My body is working to regulate and come back into balance. I've been through this before and I've always been okay. I've always gotten through it. And before I share tools, I want to say this is genuinely the greatest piece of advice that I was given that actually has allowed me to manage moments of heightened anxiety without spiraling in them like I used to. And that is to welcome your anxiety symptoms. Tell yourself that it's safe to feel the symptoms that you're feeling. And this can sound crazy or counterintuitive when you're thinking, well, it feels like I'm about to pass out or die or throw up. And I totally get it, but it's the first step to sending the signal to your nervous system and your body that you're actually safe. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Instead of feeling those symptoms or having an intrusive thought loop come in and you start to worry about it, thinking, what if, I'm in danger, I'm scared, this is bad, spiking your stress and your anxiety more and more and more. Whereas if you just try your best to tell yourself that it's safe to feel symptoms of anxiety, say, okay, I'm safe to feel this. What are you trying to tell me, body? What do you need? I've felt this before and I'll make it through again. That immediately sends a signal of safety to your body. And it might not be instant relief, but it is going to help you. I can promise you this. I've had, even recently, some experiences where heightened anxiety came up, and I was out in a public setting at an event with friends, and it was a situation where before I would have been sent into a full-blown attack that was uncontrollable, and it probably would have lasted days. This time, I reminded myself of all the tools that I have, leaned into the fact that this is just a passing moment in time. I am okay. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean that I'm unsafe. And honestly, taking what you need in these moments instead of trying to mask or hide it or cover it up, fearing what other people are going to think or what you're going to look like to others. If you need to leave the event, go home, stay in that night, or maybe you need to see friends, you need to shake your limbs around, you need to take yourself outside, you need to do some deep breathing, taking what you need in the moment, and don't care what other people are thinking about it. Because the thoughts of, well, what if other people can tell that I'm feeling this? What do I look like to others? What if I pass out in front of others? What if it looks weird to others that I'm taking myself to the bathroom or going outside? That, again, is just creating even more anxiety and more signals to your body that you're in danger. And this is all easier said than done. But I promise you, it is a life changer. And it has been helpful to me because anxiety does still come up. And that was a recent experience of mine where I had to take myself to the bathroom a couple times. I had to take myself outside. I am very blessed with very supportive friends, so I had my friends actually coming outside with me while I was at this event, and I was doing some deep breathing. I whipped my peppermint oil bottle out of my purse, and I was sniffing it at the table, and I recognized, you know what, I'm gonna take myself home. I need to go home instead of try and stick this out and continue this night with my friends out of fear of seeming like I'm weak or ruining the vibe or whatever, that I genuinely would have felt that way before when I was really struggling with my anxiety disorder. I recognized I need to go home, and that's okay. And this doesn't feel great, but I'm gonna be okay. It's kind of insane how we hear about mindset all the time, but genuinely how you speak to yourself and the thoughts that you choose to feed yourself have such an impact on your mental health and how you're feeling in a moment of anxiety. Because you have the option, you don't always have the option, I want to say, I'm not saying you can always control an anxiety attack, but there are things you can do to try and help yourself, to regulate yourself when a symptom of anxiety comes up. And that shift from feeding into fear-based thoughts and worrying and spiraling when you're feeling those symptoms versus welcoming them, telling yourself you're safe to feel them, they're going to pass. Just because you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean you're unsafe. The difference in those two different mindsets, challenging your thoughts versus succumbing to them, has been ginormous for me. And I really encourage you to try it if you're someone who struggles with anxiety. And to feel intuitively what you need. What is your body asking you for? Because maybe your body's calling for you to close your eyes, do some deep breathing, listen to some healing frequencies. 528 hertz and 432 hertz are really good for anxiety. But yeah, maybe you're wanting to slow down and get more still and quiet and intentional with your breath when anxiety comes up. Or maybe you're wanting to get more active, shaking it out, screaming it out, humming it out, jumping up and down, doing tapping. Listen to what feels right for you in the moment, because it can be different from person to person. And I know on social media now there can be so many differing opinions, differing information of like, you should never try and do breath work if you're feeling anxious, or you should never try and meditate. I would never tell someone to be still when they're feeling anxiety. And then other ones are like, this breath work is the best for when you're feeling anxious. There's just so many differing opinions and differing information. So I just encourage you to try out everything, anything, whatever you feel you need in the moment. And it doesn't matter what works for anyone else. Just try out and see what works for you. And really try and not worry about how it's affecting others, because you're not hurting anyone by putting yourself first and taking care of yourself. However, you have to take care of yourself when you're having anxiety. Okay, as we move into these next tips, I want to tell you a story. I was recently on an airplane, and it reminded me, especially coming up on this anniversary of being Effexor free, that a very common environment or situation for me to feel anxious is when I'm on a plane and I'm doing a-okay, I'm fine, but we start to move on the plane, we're taking off, and you aren't going to be able to get up and go use the washroom for the next 20 minutes or however long until you get up in the air and they turn the seatbelt sign off. That always makes me feel a little bit anxious, because I've realized whenever I'm put into an environment where I know that I'm not able to get up and leave, or get up and go to the washroom, or get up and move, my instinct is to feel anxious about that and wonder, well, what if I need to? What if I feel sick and I'm gonna throw up? What if I'm gonna pass out? What if I need to go to the bathroom? That always makes me feel anxious, and I had that experience again recently on a plane. But what I do now, like I just shared before about my previous story, is that I start with challenging my thoughts that I'm going to be okay. Soon I will be able to move and get up if I need to. In worst case scenario, because with anxiety too, it can be helpful to say, okay, worst case scenario, what happens? And worst case scenario, you use the paper bag they give you in case you do get sick and you throw up in your seat. Worst case, that's never happened to me, but I tell myself, worst case, that's okay. Oh, what if I pass out? Well, worst case, there's a bajillion people on this plane, so I'm gonna be fine. They'll take care of me. That's also never happened to me. So I also have evidence that none of these fears have ever come true. And I carry an anti-anxiety toolkit with me, especially when I travel. I carry peppermint oil with me everywhere I go. It is consistently in my purse. And so especially on a plane, I will just whip that out and I'm sniffing the bottle, I'm putting it on my temples, on my neck. I'm holding a selenite wand. Selenite is a crystal. It has cleansing properties, but I also like to just be able to fidget with it in my hand. I rub it on my chest. I do some self-massage, self-tapping with it. Tapping is shown to rewire your brain and help with relieving anxiety because it's interrupting your thought patterns by connecting your mind and body as you're tapping on your body. I carry mints and sour candy with me, which is also shown to relieve anxiety and anxiety nausea specifically. I always take Gravol going on a plane because I'm just prone to motion sickness, so I immediately take Gravol for that. So I remind myself, you are medicated for this, and it's always worked, so why wouldn't it work now? I make sure I have water. I sip on the water if I need. And number one, I always have healing frequencies downloaded on my phone, and I have meditations downloaded on my phone. Specifically for planes, I have flying anxiety and anxiety relief meditations downloaded on my phone. So I'll throw those on. Or if I don't feel I need that necessarily, I have shows or podcasts that make me laugh downloaded. I'll do Reiki on myself. I will do the wrist and fingertip holding energy healing technique I've shared previously on Instagram while I'm sitting on the plane. I will tap on my body while I'm sitting on the plane. There are so many little things you can do to help yourself regulate in these moments of heightened anxiety. And these are all things that I do at any time that heightened anxiety comes up. But this was a recent experience, and it is the most common situation for me to experience anxiety now. Where before, when I was struggling with my anxiety disorder, every day it was the smallest thing could send me into an anxiety attack or an anxiety episode. Now it's more so when I come into situations like that where I feel like I'm trapped if I need to escape, and what if I get sick. Even getting into an Uber a car with someone who you don't know who's driving and you're in the back seat, sometimes that can make me feel a little bit anxious of like, what if? But then again, you challenge your thoughts. What's the worst case scenario? I ask this strange man to pull the car over because I'm going to get sick, or I need some air, or hey, can I roll down the window? I throw in my headphones, I listen to my anti-anxiety healing frequencies, I sniff my peppermint bottle, and most importantly, remind myself I have so much evidence of the fact that I am okay. And I don't need to worry, and I can challenge my thoughts. And that's the thing, most of the time, if you challenge your thoughts, look for the facts and evidence of why you actually are okay and why you don't need to worry, and then ask yourself, worst case scenario, what happens? Usually that will start to help you regulate and come out of anxiety, because you will see that you are much better off than the fear-based subconscious thoughts are trying to tell you. If you're somewhere with ice, like an ice pack, frozen vegetables, you're out at a restaurant and you can just ask for a glass of ice or a drink with ice in it, using ice on your chest, your neck, your face, your hands, your wrists. You can go to the bathroom, splash yourself with cold water. That is helpful to ground you and activate your vagus nerve to shift yourself into rest and digest. Years ago, I was still on my medication, but I was having really bad anxiety and then had to get on a flight, and I just asked the flight attendant for a cup of ice, and I literally just held the ice cubes in my hand and put on a flight anxiety meditation, and I was good to go. And I'm someone who loves travel, so I will never allow anxiety to stop me from traveling. But I can't say that I don't get flight anxiety. So if you experience that, I see you and I feel you, but we can't let that stop us. Next is take a warm shower. I know there's a lot of talk about cold plunging and cold showers. I've talked about it as well. And I like to sometimes do a blast of cold. Like I'll go in a warm shower because I find it comforting when I'm having anxiety to go into a warm shower. But I'll do a few cycles of blasting myself with cold as well, because going from the cold to warm helps to activate your nervous system. But in my experience, I do prefer the warm shower. I find it more comforting in moments of heightened anxiety. And finally, in moments of heightened anxiety, surrender. Surrender to what's happening and lean into faith and trust that this will pass, like it has passed every single time. This sounds so much easier said than done. You might be thinking, okay, I can tell myself that, but it doesn't fucking feel like it. And I get that. I've been there many, many, many times. But now being off of medication, where it is strictly me and my mind and my body that are coping whenever anxiety comes up for me, I can tell you for an absolute fact that our body wants to bring us back into balance, and we are so much more innately capable of coming back into balance and becoming regulated and relieving our anxiety than we've ever been told or we've ever known, because that's all I've had to use for the last year. And whenever that moment comes up for me still, I just tell myself, look at the evidence of this past year being off of medication, and I've felt the least anxiety I've felt in like 8 years in this past year off of the medication that I was put on to help me with anxiety and depression. This last year has been the most fulfilling. I've been the most balanced. My mental health has never been better. My overall health and wellness has never been better. And when anxiety does come up and old patterns or old thoughts want to come in, I have the tools to manage and to navigate the ups and downs instead of being ruled by them and spiraling in them. And if that happens too, that's okay. If you have a few days, a week, a month that's like you're down in the dumps and maybe you've had more anxiety than you've had in a long time, that's okay too. I know it's so hard to believe that in your own brain, but it's okay to struggle. You're not alone, and you're not going backwards, and you're not weak. Things will turn around. They always do. That is the reason for the name of this podcast, Ebbs and Flows. I want to acknowledge always that it's never black and white. Everything moves in ebbs and flows. Healing is not linear, and it's also not about becoming perfect, quote unquote, or never feeling certain emotions ever again, never struggling ever again, because that's the human experience. And even that can be a helpful and healing reminder. It's all part of the human experience. And recognizing that at the end of the day, we are a human on a floating rock in a universe that is so much bigger than anything that we are stressing or feeling anxious about. And you are worthy of being here. You're worthy of living a life where you feel joy and balance. And it is possible to live life off of medication or to come off of medication if it's something that you're on and you feel scared of what it might be like to come off. I've been there, and I want to validate how you're feeling, but just know that I know for a fact, because if it was possible for me and if this has been possible for me, it's possible for you. And again, a disclaimer is that I'm not saying medication is a bad thing and everyone needs to get off of it at all. I'm just sharing my experience and my journey because I know others can relate to it, and that there's power in sharing your story and your experience, because as I always say, you are never alone, no matter what you're feeling or experiencing at any given moment in life. And whatever you're feeling or experiencing doesn't have to be your entire story. You are safe to change, you're safe to heal, you're safe to grow, and there's no perfect linear path to that. Learning that we all have innately the power to heal and grow within us was the greatest lesson I have ever learned and continue to learn in this life. Again, if you're interested in hearing more about my Effexor journey, you can listen to episodes 1 through 3 of this podcast, my Effexor series. I hope that this episode reminded you that you are never alone. You are safe to heal, you're safe to grow, you're safe to change, and your thoughts are not facts. You don't have to believe them, and you deserve to feel safe in your body again. If anything I shared resonated with you, I would love to hear from you or walk with you on your journey, whether it's through my meditations, my podcast, my Reiki healing, or connecting on Instagram. Everything will be linked in the show description below. I am sending so much love and gratitude. I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.